Hi, everyone. Today, I want to talk to you about urge surfing. So if you've ever heard of this concept of urge surfing or riding the urge, and it's a mindfulness exercise. So, an urge is a desire for you to do something. And the idea of urge surfing is helping you to surf the wave of that desire or to observe or manage that urge, but not do the action. So, for example, you may have an urge to drink or to take drugs, or it could be to do with the technology or certain food that you don't want to eat. We get urges all the time. That's what drives our behavior. But sometimes we're repeating that action too much and we want to manage that. And urge surfing is a really powerful way, which is sometimes shared in mindfulness courses to help you to manage that process. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. You could define it or think of it as a way of managing unwanted behaviors. So, what is urge surfing? So, urge surfing is about learning to pay attention to the physical sensations that are associated with an urge. Uh, you may not know it, but when we actually have an urge to do a certain action, it's very physical. We feel it in our body. There may be some sensations around our belly, our stomach, or around our chest. And normally we take the action so quickly, we don't actually notice the physical sensations around it. So the mindful approach is to actually start to notice those sensations that arise in you. And the idea with this urge surfing or a mindful approach is about it's not feeding the urge. Um, we can feed the urge through the repetitive thoughts that we have again and again about whatever it is that we want to do. So that's called rumination, where it repeats and it goes round and round. So it's about noticing that and stepping back from it. It's about not overly paying attention to the urge so much that you want to take action on it. And it's about noticing how we may justify the urge. So let's say if we want to eat a certain piece of food, we're like, oh, just one more, that kind of thing. So noticing that too. And the idea or the challenge for us is to accept the urge, to allow the urge to be there, not to fight it or run away from it, but to let it be there. And that's why we use this metaphor of riding the wave of the urge. Now, thinking about the metaphor of waves and water, there's actually a few different ways of thinking about it. So you can think of an urge as like a wave in the ocean. And as you know, with waves, they start small and they rise up, up, up. They reach a peak and then they go back down again. And that's actually what happens in an urge. You may never have actually sat through an urge and let it be there, but often, they may last 5, 10, maybe 20 minutes at most, about half an hour. And the urge then subsides. It actually goes away if we can sit through it. So it's a bit like a wave, and just like waves, they would reach a peak and go down again. They don't keep rising forever. It's actually the same thing with an urge, and that's quite surprising. Um, Fighting, another metaphor, a water metaphor, is I don't know if you ever heard of this thing called the rip tide, and this is when the tide is so strong. If you're in the water, the tide is so strong to push you out into the ocean that if you try and force yourself to fight against it, you just get yourself very, very tired and you can end up being pulled out even further out into the ocean. And so the strategy is actually to kind of go with the flow of the wave or to go parallel to it. And then once that rip tide passes, then you can swim back to the shore. So that could be another metaphor that's helpful for you when thinking about urges. Or finally, another nice metaphor, it's not a wave, but it's actually, you can think of it like a waterfall. And observing the urge is like standing behind the waterfall and just watching that water fall down in front of you. And so the urge is like that. You're not fighting against the waterfall. You're not standing in the waterfall and trying to push that water back up, which we sometimes do with emotions. We fight them. But it's actually learning to just breathe and step a little bit further back from that waterfall and to watch the urge flow through you. So that could be a metaphor that works for you. So these water metaphors are lovely, and you could use any one of them. You can experiment. So you may be wondering, how do you actually practice this urge surfing? Well, first of all, you'd hopefully have done a little bit of mindfulness, things like mindful breathing. So you know what mindfulness is about. It's about being with things as they are, connecting with the present moment, connecting with your body, being aware of your thoughts and feelings and sensations. And you watch your breath. And then when this urge arises, or when you're in the midst of finding yourself having this urge, what do you do with it? Or you may kind of sit down, and after having taken 2 or 3 breaths, you actually notice the physical sensations of the urge and bring curiosity. And you do this by asking yourself questions like, where do I feel this urge in my body? Where exactly is it? What's the shape of it? Does it have a color associated with it, perhaps, or a texture? Does it have a heat? What happens when I feel it together with my breathing? Does it rise with the in-breath and fall with the out-breath, or the opposite, perhaps? So we replace this idea of being scared of the urge or having to just fulfill the urge straight away with a sense of curiosity, a sense of interest, perhaps even a sense of kindness towards it. And you continue this process until you watch this urge subside, like you would watch a wave subside. And you may want to start with a small urge to begin with to practice, or even without an urge. And then as you get a bit more experience, you could try it with the more challenging urges. When you do this process of urge surfing, start with one area in the body and with one urge, rather than trying to deal with too much. You can notice the intensity of it, the exact position of it, as I said. What's the quality of it? That's another question you could ask yourself. And watch how it changes over time. As the seconds and minutes pass, the urge changes. So notice the change in it. And bringing to mind these metaphors of like the waterfall, imagining that waterfall and the urge being the waterfall, or imagining that riptide and you're just going with the flow of it rather than fighting it, or almost like surfing a wave. So you're like a surfer and you're surfing the wave of this urge. You may feel uncomfortable, don't have to necessarily like it, but you're experimenting, you're being curious, you're noticing it. And then however it goes, see if you can praise yourself or congratulate yourself with however long you manage to be with the urge. You may not be successful. You may end up fulfilling the desire of that urge or acting on that urge. But rather than beating yourself up and seeing yourself as a complete failure, which is what the mind can do, you can just say, hey, I managed it for a few seconds or managed it for a minute. Well done for me for trying, and I'll have another go next time. And if you bring this attitude each time, you get better and better at it. You build your confidence in it, and you're more likely to have another go at it. So remember, start with one urge at a time when you're practicing this urge surfing. Managing things like sleeping enough, eating the right amounts when you can, doing some exercise, keeping yourself healthy as best you can, makes it more likely for you to be successful in this process of urge surfing. And this can help to strengthen kind of your willpower as well. And remember to be kind to yourself. So you can think of it as praising yourself, congratulating yourself in any way that works for you. But using kind words and kind language, no matter whether you're successful with this urge surfing or not. So that's the idea with the urge surfing. That's the kind of approach that you take. I hope you found it helpful, and let me know if you have any follow-up questions.